John Lennon and Paul McCartney wrote most of the songs that the Beatles were famous for. Despite their differences, the two frequently found common ground in their music, which resulted in breathtaking fusions. Opposite poles generate electricity. Between John and Paul, the sparks flew, remarked Wilfred Mellers of Music and Musicians magazine about their collaboration in 1972. The poetic elegance of Paul softened John's raging iconoclasm, and the resiliency of John hardened Paul's wide-eyed attractiveness. At first, they would meet at Paul's boyhood home on Allerton's Forthland Road to write. However, as they matured and developed distinct tastes in art, they frequently worked alone before sharing their final drafts with one another. All of the songs written by John and Paul when they were members of the Beatles were given the combined credit of Lennon McCartney, regardless of who wrote them. As was the case with Eleanor Rigby, this sometimes caused disputes over who was the principal creative force. The song that was included on the double A-side record with Eleanor Rigby had a similar tone. However, it was more humorous. Its companion song, Yellow Submarine, debuted on record stores on August 5, 1966. Ringo Starr sang a children's song written by John and Paul. Eleanor Rigby and Yellow Submarine were two very distinct ways in which the Beatles broke with their previous work. While on vacation in Greece, Paul had an ice cream treat that was locally known as a submarine yellow or red, and the inspiration for the song came to him. While on an acid trip, John also considered making his home in a submarine. Ringo sang what was essentially a trippy concept turned into a tune with a nursery rhyme vibe. It was a commercial success. In 1967, it was recognized as the best-selling British A-side single with an Ivor Novello Award. John and Paul made light of the fact that they weren't its principal creators in an interview with BBC journalist Brian Matthew. To Mr. Matthew's question about who was principally responsible, Paul or John, John responded, "Paul." "John, really?" Paul continued. John said it was Ringo's work, and after a couple more comedic retorts, Paul finally revealed everything. As Paul pointed out, the song was never designed for a serious audience. He just stated, "It's a happy place." A children's song was what we were attempting to compose. The core concept was that. Next to several crossed-out early lyrics, John wrote, "Disgusting," indicating that he wasn't a fan of certain of the song's concepts. Members of the Kinks, who were musical peers with the Beatles, summed up the song's quality as a load of old rubbish. In response to it, Record World's review of Yellow Submarine concluded, "The Beatles are out for a whacking good time on this jolly nonsense song sparked by all sorts of sideshow sounds." Despite this, most critics were admirers of the album when it was released.